Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Revenue Growth Architects podcast. It's Chrissy and Charlie here. And today we're going to cover 3 topics per usual. So let's get to it. All right. So I think I like today's topic. I think it applies to everyone. Doesn't matter like what you're doing because everyone in go-to-market ops is doing projects or doing things. And we're going to talk about where do go-to-market operations projects go wrong? We do a lot for different size companies. We see things go swimmingly well, and then we also see where things go maybe not so well. And we've learned our own lessons, but we also see what can go wrong for people internally. So Charlie, I want to hear from you. Where do you think go-to-market ops projects go wrong?
Well, first off, well done for being honest that not every project goes perfectly at CS2. I'd say we've got a good hit rate though.
We do.
But there are some things that end up, making a project a bit difficult. And we've got 4 on our list that we'll go through, but we might end up adding more, right? Yeah. So should we just dive through that list? So number 1 is, well, first off, one of the concepts that we kind of figured out at CS2, we call it the 3 or 4 horsemen, depending on the day. But there's a few red flags with projects when if you have all 3, the project can be really difficult. Mm-hmm. So
we call it the 4 horsemen, and it's funny because I saw something the other day. It was like 4-headed monster, 3-headed monster, or whatever, and I was like, I feel like it's more of a monster.
4-headed monster.
Just kidding, but it's that is object.
Yeah, we can rename it if you want. I'm happy, whatever. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is kind of maybe a little bit too intense because it's not like it. Yeah, anyway, moving on. So the point is, there's a few key categories that if you're someone who works for an agency or if you're someone who works internally in operations, like look out for these things because you don't want all 3, okay?
Yeah.
And the number 4 on this list is a bit more specific if you are an agency. So number 1 is there is a high level of team complexity. Mm-hmm. So this could be you're a big company, where there's a lot of stakeholders involved in the project that you're about to work on. It could even mean you're a small company, but there's a few very opinionated people involved in the project that are going to potentially create a lot of issues getting alignment and getting some decisions made. Or it could be you don't have an internal operations lead who is a leader, who is both strategic, technical, and good at project management. Mm-hmm. So someone who's going to shepherd this project through, even if you have an agency partner like CS2, that is very important internally. Someone that understands what's happening, can shepherd the project through all the stages internally, can do a lot of the behind the scenes work. So number 1, team complexity, and there are a few of the things to look for. Number 2 is your just general tech stack, data, process complexity, right? Is your Salesforce org a shit show? Do you have a ton of automation? Do you have a lot of processes that are all dependent on each other? Like your reporting is dependent on all of these different processes to work in the right order. And if you tear one thing out, it breaks another thing. You might have this general feeling of every time I pull a string in a certain direction, I'm trying to uncover one thing. I enter the rabbit hole and I uncover 100 things. Every person in ops has had that feeling, probably. It doesn't matter how complex, but you know it if you really are uncomfortable with the foundation that you've got, and you're just like, this is a brittle ecosystem that's incredibly complicated. Yeah, that's number 2.
And then they're not really familiar with is also hard.
There's no one that's like.
There's not documented. But all the people that did it was gone.
Yeah. And that can come back to the team complexity too. Where maybe there's been a lot of turnover, there's new people, etc. So number 3, this is where the scope of what you're trying to work on is really big and wide ranging and touches a lot of different people and teams and tools and systems and processes. And you're trying to solve a lot at once. Yeah. Right. Number 4, like I said, is a bit more focused for the agency side. It's like, okay, but maybe it's relevant for some people. Is you don't have a big budget, right?
Yeah, but that's also can be there's not enough resources, team,
right,
internally to actually execute.
You don't have the team internally. That it's kind of a little
like
bit
the
related to
ratio
team
is off,
size.
right? Between the people operating versus the people that are doing good market like activities, like sales and marketers. So
yeah. So, but taking maybe the budget side out of it a little bit, those first three, so team complexity, tech, process, tool complexity, and scope complexity. If you have all of those three, that is a very high risk project.
Yeah.
And
so I think some people listening might be like, well, that's just the nature of my business that I'm in right now. And I don't want my go-to-market projects to go wrong.
Right.
So how do you combat that?
This is where you need to identify those three things.
Yeah.
And try and find some breathing room on one of them. Mm-hmm. So generally,
you can't have all four, and let's say four too, because I think the having enough people to execute is a big one.
But the four in our world is more around like agency resources and budget.
Right.
So like, because otherwise, kind of, if you bring in the people side, that's kind of like number one too. The people complexity.
That's true.
So the thing is, even if you have a large budget, so say you've got a really complicated, massive team, you're trying to take on a massive scope, and you've got a massive kind of shit show monster of systems. Mm-hmm. Number four, the budget. You're going to need a huge multi-$100,000 budget, to be able to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
Now, so I think that's an interesting thing to talk about on the budget. But what I want to focus on for internal people, where I think is a bit more useful, is trying to find a way to reduce one of the first three.
Yeah.
So say, for example, you've worked for a bigger company. It's really complicated, tons of stakeholders. And maybe because of that, you've got really old systems and there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. You probably have to find a way to simplify the scope.
Yeah.
Or spread the scope out over a longer period of time. So if we take those two examples, so sometimes you might be like, we want to do new reporting. And to do new reporting, we need our new foundation. And for our new foundation, we need to fix our sales process. We need to fix our UTM capture, our lead sourcing. We need to train all of our team, our data capture, our data flow through our systems, our integrate, like all of this and our scoring and our campaign structure. And it turns into this is like, okay, we're basically doing everything, right?
Yeah.
Our recommendation would be...
I would say even there, like a big learning that I've learned from being in this for 15 plus years is like, even when you try to think of like what all the things involved would be, you're underestimating.
There's more. Yeah.
There's way more.
There's more dependencies than you think.
So if you already have a feeling that there's too much, there's way too much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the goal would be try and reduce that scope or spread it out, right?
Spread it out, yeah.
Try and take on some of those more foundational projects. And this can be hard sometimes because there's so many dependencies between things. It's like, well, if I do this, then I have to do this. It's kind of like remodeling a house. You're like, okay, I want to do my kitchen, but to do my kitchen, I need to do my entryway. And if I do my entryway, that means I kind of need to do the bathroom off the entryway. And if I do that, then my front door needs to change. And if I do my front door, I need to do my driveway. And it just turns into just
I should have just knocked down the whole thing.
Right. Well, okay. So, and now that is actually one way that you can sometimes reduce the complexity. Mm-hmm. It is so much easier. Well, actually, I'm going to rephrase this. It can be easier to just start again than retrofit. It's like a house remodel, right? You lose a lot sometimes when you kind of start from scratch. But if you take a house remodel as an example, what we're often trying to do in these really complex go-to-market ops projects is like remodel this huge house with all these people living in it that are reliant on things
that don't want to move
while they're living in it, right? And no one's moving out. Like that's what makes it really hard. And
don't bother them either.
Yeah, and you have to make it seamless. Like, they can just, they're all working from home and their kids are at home. It's just like, okay, it's really difficult. But, there is an option that you can, like we have some clients right now that are just like, okay, we're just going to implement a new Salesforce and Marketo, right?
Yeah, it has worked better. Honestly.
It is easier because the rest of the stuff can kind of carry on. You're building this whole new kind of perfect ecosystem over here. It does get painful when you move people into it. There are some things with the data that you lose.
Yeah.
Just like random things like Salesforce, campaign membership. You can't like change the responded date. So maybe you need like a custom field for the responded. So there's like a little weird technical things like that, but it's just something to think about.
I will say like, if companies are being really honest with themselves, and I'm one person who I'm like, I want history, I want to be able, most companies are not looking back that far on their data.
Yeah, and there's ways you can get around it. Like particularly if you're that big of a company, maybe, put it in data lake warehouse. And,
there's ways around it. I will say one thing here too. If you're struggling, if you want to do both, but you want to take a slow approach, and I did this with a client recently, is to also identify like 2 different work streams and then build those into slower phases. So one of those is like a business process change work stream where you need to involve more people, and it's like big changes that everyone needs to like be aligned on, make decisions on, and you need more people involved. And then you have another work stream which is maybe more tied to just like, what can my like MOPS and SOPs or RevOps team just execute well without it being like a huge impact on the business or everything else, the whole go-to-market team. And I think doing that too is good, because you can at least get started on that one work stream and it can move faster, while and those are dependencies on the things that are maybe going to move slower that you need everyone to get aligned on. And I think communicating that is really key too, because then at least like your key stakeholders know that you're not just like not going to do anything while you're just spinning your wheels, or everyone's spinning their wheels. Like you're actually going to see if you can make progress. And that's what it kind of feels like when you're in that type of situation. You're just taking this big boulder and moving it up, but like, can you actually just turn that boulder into like, 2 different or 3 different, rocks, and have them moving up maybe at different points, but you're more likely to get to that end spot at some point, instead of just like never being able to.
It's like, I want to remodel my whole house, but I'm going to start with my bathroom, finish that. Then I'm going to do my kitchen, finish that. Then I'm going to do my other bathroom. It's like, you're not doing it all at once, and everyone can kind of like move into this part of the house for a bit and then move into that part of the house and then get trained on how to use this other part of the house. Like, it definitely splitting it up. But I think
you have wins. Like, I think the thing here is like, you need to have like some
momentum,
wins.
gather momentum.
Because you're going to lose your team too if they're just waiting around to like see things come to fruition.
That's like if it takes so long sometimes to get these projects, like there's turnover, not just because it's taking so long, but like just the normal turnover, and that can create a lot of issues. We saw that with one client recently.
Yeah.
So, but the one thing that's important to call out here is you have levers across maybe all 4, but like let's focus on all those 3 things, right? So say you are tasked with this monster scope. You can't change that now, and you've got a very complicated team, and you have a very complicated org, like tech, process, data, etc. You're going to have to find somewhere to mitigate some of this risk. Now, if your systems are very complicated, that's part of the project probably to fix that.
Yeah.
So you can't, just have that magically happen. So the place you have to focus on is on the team side. Now, on the team side, some of the levers that you have, or some of the risks that I would really want to call out here, you need, like I mentioned at the beginning, you need someone who's going to be like the lead, who's technical, strategic, knows all the people involved, and can really see this project through the details and through all of the development stages of the project.
Yeah.
And even if you have an agency partner or not, but our best, most successful projects are not when CS2 is just like doing everything, and you kind of like the client like moves out of their house and you move in and redo it, and then they move back in. It's not that show. What was that show where people like
Extreme
get that
home makeover?
Yeah, whatever. It's not that. No, it's when we're partnering.
They do it in like weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably all crappy, but anyway. But you're partnering together on the project, and we have a really strong internal stakeholder that's going to help us through all of the complexity.
Yeah.
And I think even if you have an agency or not, you need that person.
Yeah.
And then that person needs to assign each of those key work streams, because you're doing a monster scope. There's probably could be a dozen work streams happening at once. Each of those work streams needs a lead, and you probably need some kind of RACI model on knowing who's responsible, accountable, etc. And everyone needs to be clear on it. And you need excellent project management, really clear project management, and really good communication. So you need to lean big into the soft skills and those areas of the project, and that's the only way a really big scope with a really complicated system is going to be successful.
Yeah.
If you don't have that internally, you need to call it out as a massive red flag, and then you need to figure out, okay, can we reduce the scope? Like something has to give, because if you can't get those people in the right place and you're taking on this monster scope and you have this crazy system, it's going to be really difficult for this to be a successful project for everyone. And it's just going to be a sufferfest for everyone for months.
Yeah. I think communication is key. Early communication, identifying like risks, making sure that anyone who could be affected has been on board from the start, is educated. I think people don't realize like how much education on what is changing needs to be done, and everyone needs to sign off on it. Like there's been so many times, literally, even when someone's been on calls the whole entire time, we've seen it last minute, mile 25, someone's like, whoa, wait.
What are we
That's not what I wanted.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I know.
Dude, you've been here on this whole time. Like, why did so? Literally, that could be
that's someone that's been there the whole time. There's
Imagine
like so many
the people
instances,
that you didn't involve.
And this is where the team is, like, if you're like IT owned Salesforce or something, and this is a marketing led project, and you're doing all this stuff, and then right at the last minute you throw it over to IT, and they're just like, what the like, what are you doing? Like, why?
Yeah.
Bring them in earlier. Like,
bring everyone
all
in
of those
early.
stakeholders
like,
in.
Honestly, have a marketing campaign almost like you're doing for these projects. Like, communicate, educate, show the before and after, really sell the vision, literally making someone sign off on it. These are all things that can help. And if that's not your strong suit, maybe figure out like someone around you who can help you shepherd, or who can give you advice on what communication formats like matter, how like, and figure out something that's going to work for you, but that works for other people too. Like sending out like just like a deck or something to people and making sure they saw your email is not enough. Like it needs to be thinking about the user experience and like how they're going to take in that information, how they can communicate back to you to feel like everyone is on the same page and so forth.
Yeah, we've talked for years about how the soft skills are really important for an ops person who wants to move up the ranks. We probably haven't talked enough about project management being one of those skills. I think once you get into a leadership position in ops, it's particularly where you're at a decent sized org, you have to be really good at project management because these projects are honestly sometimes as complicated as I think that a project can get, right? You might have 24 people that need to be kind of brought in and looped in, opinions handled and kind of kept up to date. You might have hundreds of people who get impacted by this, right? You're doing a new sales process, you're implementing a new marketing process. There could literally be hundreds of people whose jobs change when you implement that.
Yeah.
And you need to do impact analysis, training, figuring out how to get them enabled, etc. And all of this is going to be very painful if you don't have project management skills. So honestly, I feel like we're learning this in real time, at CS2, how we need to constantly be improving project management at our company as well. But I would recommend go out there, find a course, read about it, build a framework. If you're a lead in ops, really think about your project management framework, like your weekly call schedules, what the tools that you're using, how you get building in maybe a RACI framework or something like that to be able to get people structured in the right way to be able to get this work done. Lean into it in a big way because people notice project management deficiencies way before they notice technical issues, right? Because some of these projects that we're working on these days, they're like 6, 7, 8 month projects, right? And you don't actually see anything new in the systems maybe until month 6 for some of them. I mean, not all of our work. A lot of our work's a lot quicker than that. But we've got a few projects going on that are multi-month projects at least. And our clients will always pick up more on just kind of how the project's being run, right? Way before they see all of the great technical work that we've done at the end, because they don't see that right until the end. So, and then that's your moment to kind of win or lose people is on the project management and just the way that you're working that project. And this is where that people piece, you should be leaning into it anyway. But if you have like very complicated team, very complicated systems, and a really complicated scope, you have to be all over it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else that folks can do to make sure their go-to-market ops projects don't go wrong?
I mean, there's a few kind of just top of mind things here. So like related to the people thing, committee, death by committee is a thing.
Yeah, 100%.
This is why the RACI framework's important.
Yeah.
If you have a dozen people that need to be, consulted or informed about something, but maybe they're not like find the person who's going to be accountable and responsible who can like make that decision.
Yeah.
Because, we've seen situations where we're like things like what the stages should be, like how we should be handling stage 0 opportunities for clients, where like you literally can go in kind of circles and circles and circles while, these 3 people need to be like kind of looped in and they all have an opinion and that conflicts with these other people. Like, but like, no, if there's no like leadership there to be like, no, this is how we're going to do it, and everyone kind of fall in line, you can just spin in circles, like kind of infinitely, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard because psychologically, like everyone wants to have an opinion, but a lot of times people don't want to make a decision.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it.
Like, so you can like, don't think that like, because you're involving more people, you might get to a better decision. You're just going to have more conflicting opinions. Like,
I mean, involve them, but you need someone
but then
who's going to make a decision.
Exactly. You need to have someone make a decision, and you can't please everyone.
Right.
Like,
yeah. And then some of the other notes I had here were just like in general, the project management at comms, like we talked about. So one of the things that we like to do at CS2 is that every week, give each client an update on everything that we're working on. So if you had a big project going on, like have a Slack channel for that project, send a weekly update. What's at risk? Well, the way ours is structured is like what we completed last week, what we're working on this week, what we're waiting on, and any risks. Mm-hmm. To be really clear with everyone about risks, because what you don't want is to be kind of marching towards this deadline where like you're nowhere near ready and you're just going to fall off this cliff, but everyone's just kind of like walking towards the cliff and you're just hoping that a bridge is just going to like magically appear and take us to the other side of the Grand Canyon. Those bridges do not appear. You just fall off the cliff. Mm-hmm. So, call out those risks loud and often so everyone knows. And then if you have to shift the dates on things, then everyone's like, oh yeah, of course. Like you've been letting us know about that this was waiting on a risk for like 2 months and we still didn't make a decision on XYZ. Of course, we have to push the date.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like kind of trying to power through and be the hero and not let anyone know. And then you're 2 weeks before when everyone thinks you're going to deploy and you're like, oh, well, by the way, like you guys haven't made a decision on this. Now we have to push. They're like, well, why didn't you tell us this like 2 months ago that would be a reason to push? Because in ops, we kind of underappreciate how complicated everything is, and like we understand it and all the dependencies and the steps and everything. We need to appreciate that a lot of other people who are involved in the project do not understand that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand, oh, we don't make this decision. Of course we have to push. Like, we understand that instinctively. They might not.
Yeah.
So make it very clear. And then, yeah, everything else we talked about.
Yeah. I think maybe the final thing to say on this is like, you notice that a lot of the things that make the projects go wrong are not like, we chose the wrong tool, we didn't solution it well enough. Like that's the easy part is like figuring out what solution.
Not easy.
But well, not the easy part, you know what I mean? But like, it's not always the part that really goes wrong. It can be a lot of the time, but like, wrong
you need
solution
the right
was, and then a Band-Aid was put in. But like, say you have the right tech, the right solution, all that kind of stuff. It's really how you can just work with these dynamics of like people and the environment that is so hard to plan for.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yep.